Hey everyone. How are you doing? I hope you're doing well. It is April 6th. Happy Monday. Happy Monday. I am here with great news for the future of work and a highlight to my knowledge and understanding of where the direction of modern workplace is going. New research has come out to highlight that I was right all along and I continue to be right that remote work is here to stay, and that the failures of remote work are a result of leadership incompetence and not employees. Leadership incompetence kills remote work. I'm here to tell you that. A new study is here to highlight that. And I'm just glad to see you guys. Glad to be here. So let's get into it. I'm going to be focusing on this article that is in Inc. magazine. As you can read, remote work isn't the problem. Poor management is. New study finds managers need better training to supervise remote teams. This is something that I've been saying from the beginning. Even got a little scuffle in the comments from my last video about remote work, highlighting that leadership is the key to driving employee performance. Employees are the key to business success. So, if you're having issues with your remote framework or your hybrid framework, regardless what the framework is, that's a leadership problem. That is not an employee problem. That is a leadership problem. And leaders and managers and supervisors and all of those in those positions are the ones that need to be looked at for why there is an issue with operations and why different investments, regardless of what they are, aren't beneficial. But let's go ahead and get into it in regards to this article. Let me pull it up real quick. All right, let me get you guys situated. Okay, as I said before, this is in Inc. magazine. And one second. I'm gonna move you guys on this side because I'm used to you being over here. It's easier for me to read because I am right-handed. All right. So, as you can see, the title is, and this is an Inc. magazine, INC, period. Inc. magazines, for those that don't know, that may be overseas or somewhere where publications are different. And it is entitled Remote Work Isn't the Problem. Poor Management Is. New study finds managers need better training to supervise remote teams. Pat on the back to myself as I have been championing remote work and I've been highlighting this from the beginning and saying that I don't care what these people in these executive positions and these leadership positions and all of these people with these CEOs and all of that are downing remote work. You're only downing it because you're looking to control, and control does not drive performance. Control doesn't guarantee actual change. Actually, it's a sign of incompetence because you don't need to micromanage and control to ensure that employees are performing effectively. So let's go on and get into it. All right, remote work sounds like a great idea for our hyper connected world, and countless studies support the value of this workplace model, which has become more common since COVID. For instance, data from KPMG shows that companies that allow remote work grow 1.7 times faster. But the topic of remote work and hybrid work somehow remains contentious, with many company leaders insisting on banging the remote to office drum, claiming they can't properly control their company's performance without having their staff working within direct views. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me. I'm reading the article. I'll put the link to the article when I'm finished with the live. I'll put it in the description, okay? But I like to read it. People like when I read it, so and I enjoy reading it to you guys. Now, new data from a UK study adds yet more support for the value of remote work and points out that it's actually weak management capabilities coming from poor training that are blocking successful remote hybrid models. This goes back into what I've been speaking about, how all the new leaders and the leadership that we currently have are learning off of best practices and this idea of what leadership is and not actually what requires good leadership. And this being shown when it comes to remote work, which is a new design and a way of working, right? So no best practice is going to tell you how to effectively operate in this way. So of course, you're going to have leaders that are just incompetent because they're leaning on the old way of doing things, and the old way of doing things isn't really based on a more democratic or a more future focused psychological standpoint of understanding how employees perform. It's more focused on just what the leader wants and what the leader views as important. So this is why we continue to have these problems because leaders are not learning from the past and they're dragging these old ways into the future. But I digress. Let's keep going. The new research from economics researchers at the London School of Economics and Birmingham University points to the reason this problem is important. Despite this hybridization trend, why they gotta use big words like that? Let's just keep it to the real jargon. I hate when people do that hybridization trend, there is a growing tension between employees who value the flexibility it offers and some employers who are pushing for a return to in person arrangements. The researchers looked at 800 companies and found that if you want to properly benefit from remote work, the key factor is the simplest one training, which is a big duh, right? Training. The data shows that companies that invested in systematic training were more than twice as likely to report productivity gains, 42% versus 20%. Psych, Psych.org reports adopting and embracing hybrid work earlier rather than later also delivered an advantage, the data shows. The workplaces that were well placed to adopt remote work in 2020 said they had the highest positive productivity impacts and lowest negative productivity impacts from the shift to remote work, compared with firms that moved more slowly or more reluctantly. All of that is interesting from a business operations perspective. But the statistic that should have managers' eyes popping out the most is that 32% of companies reporting well established management habits said they saw productivity gains from remote work compared with 20% without them. Uh-huh. In other words, having well-trained, well-motivated managers leads to massive boost in productivity from hybrid and remote working teams. And this can go for in person as well. This is highlighting that we all know that when we are in the workplace in-person work, right? If management isn't motivated, if management doesn't really even believe in employees as well, and if management isn't well trained, you are not going to have great productivity. So this kind of is, to me, reading this is like a duh moment, but for many, they may not know this as they're coming up in leadership, depending on how they've been influenced by those that they have come up by learning from. You know, we learn, we mimic what we see, right? For the most part, especially if we're not being trained well. So we just mimic what we see. So this highlights this as well as what really does work for a successful workplace, also works for a remote workplace as well, regardless of how you look at it. It all boils down to good management. Those that are motivated, confident, not only in themselves, but in those that they're leading and influencing, and also them just being competent at their job. Let me keep going. The data support this the data support this argument from the flip side too. Among companies that reported struggles with remote work, this issue was concentrated in firms with leaders fumbled the management and coordination of the remote teams. 57% felt this way about team cohesion and collaboration. Like I said, why should you care about this? The paper notes from this official UK data, the share of people working from home, which essentially covers both remote and hybrid work, which is part time, of course, for most models, most working models, has essentially doubled since 2019. And these levels are higher than those in other European countries. But other research from polling Outfit Gallup about the US from comparison says the share of employees reporting a fully remote has stabilized around 26%, with 52% in some sort of hybrid arrangement and only 21% in fully on-site work. And that's because here in America there's been such a push to bring people back into the workplace, viewing that that's a better way to work when really it's not about that. As I just mentioned, it's all about good leadership and those leaders being trained effectively, recognizing how they influence and impact the workplace by them being competent in themselves and others, and them just being motivated to do their job. That's what it's all about. That is oh yeah. I agree with that, Noah. Very true. Very true. And it's very interesting, you know, because they're more focusing on that when they should be focusing on how, you know, that money could be offset for something else. Like training. Really, but they're more focused on the building, right? Than how they could go about it a different way. It's very interesting. Oh, okay. I think I heard that too about that happening in Australia. I see that all around. If you didn't check my last live, due to all the conflicts of war going on in Iran and all that, Iran, a lot of countries, not companies, well, companies do because they're in these countries, but countries like Vietnam and Thailand and places like that are now leaning back into remote work. So this study right here also is another way that you're going to probably see a lot of countries justifying the need for remote work, and then probably even looking into why and how to make remote work more effective for them as well. I could see that happening. Now, here in America, I'm not really sure, and I probably doubt it unless you have those that are true champions for it, like me. I am a champion. I feel that it's not about where you work, it's not about where you work, it's how you work and the design that is set up for it. hmm Yeah. Okay, let me go ahead and keep going. I left off right here. In other words, hybrid and remote work is now the dominant working model. So this is the dominant working model. And so, working to maximize the profit productivity it offers is a great business policy. Furthermore, the data shows that the best results come when management is trained and supported too. That's very true because there's a lot of management that it is not supported, and management and managers cannot be successful if they are not supported by executive levels and executive levels of leadership because managers are the go between employees and leadership and them truly understanding and meeting the needs of for them to be effective within the workplace. So I do agree with that. So I need to be careful of what I say when I say managers. I really like to say leadership versus managers because I know that a good manager is going to truly go to bat for their team if they're truly a good manager. We have a lot of managers out here that how did they get that job? But there are some that are very good, okay? Targeted, tailored support and technical training for managers and staff versus more generic training, of course, right? Also work best for smaller enterprises, which makes sense. I mean, a smaller enterprise doesn't need to have this large cookie cutter approach. They need to focus directly, really, if it's a smaller business, they really should be really focusing on more direct communication and relationships with employees and subordinates anyway, because it's a smaller type operation. So you need to have that more cohesive type of collaborative way of working because everything is from a more collaborative operations versus a larger corporation. Yes, needs to be tailored. I agree, Noah. You're very intelligent. The takeaways from this research for your company are easy to see. Hybrid and remote work aren't going away, which I say all the time. It is the new normal. No matter how some CEOs like Amazon's Andy JC try to argue against the model, which is very true. It's possible to trust remote workers to deliver productivity similar to on site workers. Exactly. Trust is the key word in that. Trusting your workforce. If you don't trust your workforce, then why do you have a workforce? They're the ones that are the key to business success. They're the ones that are driving productivity and performance that's just going to lead to profits for the business. So if you can't trust them, then you don't need to be in a leadership position. And that's just period. You don't need to be in a leadership position. All right, last paragraph. Training on best remote work best practices, or excuse me, practices should include managers as well as frontline staff, possibly right up to executive level. Exactly. The data shows that if you embrace it instead of insisting on pushing back, you'll get better productivity or results. Of course. And this, like I just said, revolves around a collaborative operation, understanding what works, what doesn't work, and from all understandings and aspects of those within the business. And that's, I truly believe, regardless of what size the company is as well. And as I always say, communication is the key to business success as well, because it's the key to operations. It's the key to understanding. And understanding is recognizing what needs to be done, what doesn't need to be done, what's working, what isn't working, what investments are beneficial, what aren't beneficial, everything that goes along with it. Yeah. Sorry, everyone. I'm reading the comments. Okay. Oh man, I just learned that. Yeah. It's a lot that goes into it, Noah. It's very interesting. As I said, it doesn't really matter what type of model that a business is operating from. It's all about the leadership within it. The leadership is going to determine how everything goes about effectively, because they're supposed to be the oversight, the evaluator, the ones that are doing the research to understand the how, what, when, where's, and whys, and where the money is going, and how investments are beneficial or not beneficial, and then truly understanding the needs based on employees, because the employees and the lower level workers and all those, and even managers and other supervisors as well, the collaboration of all, the communication between everyone is what is going to drive the success of the business, or just the success of the workplace and the environment that we're working in. I mean, forget the business. You're in this workspace for every day. You're coming to work every day. Some people work 6 times a week, some people work 5 times a week, regardless of how many times you work throughout the week and your work hours. You don't want to be working just because you got to work. You don't want to be in a spot where you hate it. It's a detriment to you. It's a detriment to your health. You're already probably not even being paid fairly. And if not, you're probably trying to fight your way to get better pay. All of these things, then to go and deal with a workspace that is uncomfortable, ineffective, hindering you, preventing you from just even advancing, knowledge wise, right? Because that's we're bringing our knowledge to the workspace. We're being paid for our knowledge and our intellectual property, whether we're working with our hands, thinking with our mind, whatever type of work that we're doing, right? So then you're already dealing with the micromanagement and all of that determines how a workspace is going to be effective, determines if a workspace is a place you even want to be in, if it's even productive, even if it's worth you being there, So that would never happen if we don't know how to work together and collaborate and all of that. That's the key, especially as we're moving into this modern workspace, relying a lot more on technology, AI, all of these different things. And if we can't communicate, collaborate, and understand, then we are not moving into a successful and worthy remote or modern hybrid, whatever framework it's going to be, type of workspace. That's not productive. It's not profitable for anyone, not just the business, but you as well, because you're bringing your assets to the business. You're being paid for your assets. So that means that you also want to elevate as well. You want to learn, you want to be better so that you can rise up in your own professional career. So it goes a lot into it, right? And I think that's one thing. It's another talk I want to do, where it was focusing on how leaders need to recognize that we're in a new modern way of working. So people are not going to work at the same job forever. And that's one thing that's also important and goes into why remote work can't be effective, because leaders are so busy looking to control. They're looking to micromanage. They're looking to even hinder opportunities because they feel that they're at a loss or something's going to be stolen or taken because of the way work is now. And that's just strange, and it's very counterproductive to just success in general. That's how we elevate in society, through learning. And as we all elevate, regardless of if we stay with a company or not stay with a company, it still pushes for success within every business that we step foot in. Because believe it or not, that manager's not going to work there for the next 20 years. So why are they focused on if you're going to be working there for the next 20 years? All of that control and all of that needs to go out the window. And this study right here highlights that. And I hope that it brings, some awareness to the importance of of effectively training individuals. And when we say effectively training them, this training is really just going to focus on how to effectively go about, management, influencing, and dictating, really. Because when we speak about remote work, a lot of these companies, a lot of those in leadership positions, they're all about control and micromanaging your keystrokes, micromanaging if you're actually working and how you're working, using all forms of different technologies and stuff. And that is not true leadership. That is not. That's dictatorship. That's tyranny, and it's counterproductive, and it hinders success. And it takes us back instead of pushing us forward into a new way of working, a easier way of working, and a more healthier way of working. Work should not boggle us down. It should not stress us out. We should all be paid fairly. We should all be, happy to do our jobs and want to do our jobs and be surrounded by the people that we're always around. We should not have to feel as though we have to force ourselves to be in these places, in these positions, just for the sake of compensation. And then sadly, for many of us not to even be paid fairly. Hmm? So this is just a really, really deep conversation, and I could just go and go and go and go and go, and it's just so much that goes into it, right? And just the idea of how CEOs can assume that oversight, or what they assume is oversight, which is really micromanagement and used in a negative way, is driving performance when really it's not. It's really not. And then when we look at companies, many of them are thinking that since they can't, do that, they're leaning more to technologies and AI and stuff like that to replace the human, as if we are replaceable when really we are not. And so much research has highlighted that. And it's also highlighted that a lot of these technologies have not even resulted in a return on investment for these businesses, meaning the human will always be the most valuable asset. But I did a talk on that too. Go back and check that one out. Forgot what it's entitled. I'll try to remember to put it in the information as well. But it's so much that goes into this. Um, yes, yes, very true, Noah. Sorry, I was going and going and going. I was just talking. Very true. Yes, it is so much that boils down to it, and it all leans into how we effectively communicate. I actually think that, communication is one of the greatest skills that we can have. And it's one of the skills that is leading us and shifting the way that we work in the modern workplace, and it is the most essential skill for us to be effective. I mean, even when we look at great investments in AI and different technologies, they all result in the use of communication, whether it's writing, talking, or reading or reading. We have to be very, very skilled at that. I think that's the main one. And of course, emotional intelligence, right? Where we can understand people and their perspective, because that also leads to recognizing what really need what is what to how to influence what is needed, right? For effectiveness, and what is hindering, and just the understanding overall of recognition of tapping into the intuitive aspect. A lot of people don't lean in on that when it comes to things. They kind of shy away from that because they feel as though intuition is not as strong as best practices, or what is in front of us, the assumption of what is happening versus what is really happening. Because we forget that a lot of people can say one thing and then do another. And that's one skill that us being emotionally intelligent and intuitive, and then, of course, communicating effectively, I feel those are the most technical skills. I view them as technical skills, even though many view them as non tangible, as if it's a soft skill, which is really weird because when we look at market research, when we're being marketed to by businesses and all of that to be sold products, right? They're looking at our human emotions, but people forget that our human emotions is what's driving change, is what's driving performance, how we feel, how motivated we are, how confident we are. That determines our success within a business, and it also determines the money value. It's driving the monetary aspect of a business, whether as an employee or as someone that is buying products and services. Overall, it highlights how the human is the monetary aspect, the monetary value and everything. So it's weird when we see how studies and the knowledge and learning of leadership and how to be a leader never highlights that. I probably should write a book. Y'all let me know. People tell me I should write a book. I probably should write a book because I feel like no one really, really talks about this or highlights the importance of it. Hmm. Yeah, very true. Thanks, Noah. Everyone tells me that yeah, so I'm really leaning on, yeah, I'm gonna write a book, and my understanding of what leadership is and how it can shift, the future of work and just the future of understanding, the importance of the human and how we are the key to change and driving change within society, and how we all are leaders in our own right. And when I say leadership, we when I'm speaking about remote work, of course, I'm speaking about those in leadership positions, but really I view us all as leaders. So even though I'm speaking from this aspect, now we have all learned this, and now we can go and take this information and pass it on to help strengthen our environments and the places that we step into, so that it can be better and we can, pass on the knowledge to others. Yes, I will, Noah. Let me get on that, right? Oh my goodness. Oh, I will. I will definitely, definitely, definitely get on that. I thank you guys for joining me today. We're at 25 minutes. You guys know I don't like to go longer than 20 minutes. I can ramble, but I don't like to hold you guys too long. Maybe as I grow my channel, I'll get better about doing an hour and all of that type of stuff because I can go. But I don't want to hold anyone. So all right. Thank you, Noah, for joining me. And thank you, everyone else that has stopped by. And I'll be back again tomorrow. I'll find a good topic. If you guys have any suggestions, don't forget you can put them down in the comments as well. I love a good discussion. And thank you again for joining me. And don't forget, be the change and love yourself and others. Bye.